I'm Isabella, a 35-year-old office worker. I'm married to Lucas, who's 5 years younger than me, and we live in a small apartment. Lucas has a sister, Abigail, who's 4 years younger than him. She's already married and has moved out of her in-laws' home. We don't see her or my mother-in-law often, just during summer vacation and Christmas. It's an hour's drive to my in-laws' place, but my father-in-law seems lonely, so he's been visiting us quite frequently lately. Isabella, what on earth are you doing? Open the door within 10 seconds when I ring the doorbell. You're so inconsiderate. My mother-in-law complains if I don't open the door immediately after she rings the doorbell. I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I was in the bathroom and couldn't come right away. My apologies. I don't need excuses. When I arrive, you better come out as quickly as possible. What are you standing there for? Where's my coffee? Honestly, what kind of upbringing did you have? You have no manners. She visits unannounced and expects to be treated like royalty when she's here. To be honest, I find it hard to deal with my mother-in-law. I initially thought I should be polite because she's the woman who gave birth to my husband, but I never expected her to be so rude and self-centered. I head to the kitchen, letting out a small sigh, so mother-in-law can't hear. Meanwhile, she's lounging on the sofa watching TV. Here you go, coffee and some snacks. What is this? You knew I was coming and you didn't get any fancy snacks? Bring out some delicious pastries. I don't know what to serve since she came unexpectedly, so I offered her a $3 donut from the shelf, but she wanted something more expensive and told me to go buy it right away. Next time, if you could let me know in advance, I'll prepare some pastries for you. Actually, I've been feeling unwell since this morning and was lying on the sofa. I've always been prone to catching colds during seasonal changes. Today is a weekday, but I took the day off for some errands. I never expected mother-in-law to show up today. When I asked why she came today, she said she saw my car and decided to visit. I told her I'd appreciate a heads up, but she said, "Why should I tell you my plans? This is my son's home, so I can come anytime I want. No need to inform you. But if you don't let me know, I can't prepare your favorite snacks. Plus, I have plans this afternoon and will be stepping out, so I can only accommodate you until then." I looked at mother-in-law with a troubled expression, and she clearly looked displeased. What? You want me to leave even though I came all the way here? You have no sense of hospitality, do you? No, that's not it. But I took the day off for a reason and have plans. I can only accommodate you until noon today. Please come again when Lucas is around. While snacking, mother-in-law kept talking about how a daughter-in-law should behave. She probably thinks she's doing this for my benefit, but all I wanted was for her to leave the room as soon as possible. Eventually, as I started getting ready to go out, mother-in-law seemed to give up. Next time, make sure you have at least 3 of my favorite snacks ready, she grumbled as she left. I forgot to remind her to check with me before coming over, so I sent her a WhatsApp message. She never read it. When I told my husband about all this, he said, "That sounds tough, but maybe my mom is just lonely. Could you keep her company when you have time?" I thought if that's the case, she could at least consider my schedule. Dealing with mother-in-law who always acts on her own terms is becoming increasingly exhausting. We're both busy with work. If you're so concerned, why don't you spend time with your own mother? I told him. He replied, "Isn't that something you should handle, Isabella? Women get along better, and it would make my mom happy. Please do it." And quickly headed for the bath. Clearly, my husband finds it bothersome to deal with mother-in-law too. He'd rather pass that responsibility on to me. I get it. No one wants to be bossed around by mother-in-law after a long day, but I feel the same way, and it's even more stressful because she's not my biological parent. I wish my husband would help out, but that seems unlikely given his current attitude. A few days later, I got home early from work and was preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. "Mother-in-law, what's this? The place is a mess. You're in charge of the house, so keep it tidy." Mother-in-law, didn't we just talk about this? Please check with me before coming over. It's really inconvenient when you show up unannounced. I used to be gentle about it, but that only encouraged her to take advantage, so I've started to be more direct about things. I don't like the way you prepared the snacks I asked for. Right? I specifically told you last time. Hurry up and bring them out. I came today looking forward to it. She sat on the sofa, expecting me to bring the snacks. But of course, I didn't have time to prepare anything. "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were coming, so I didn't prepare any snacks," I explained. When I told her I didn't have the snacks, she was visibly annoyed. What do you mean you didn't prepare them? I told you last time. You're such a failure as a wife. I can't believe Lucas fell for someone like you. I would never let someone like you marry into the family. You're so inconsiderate, she scolded. I was really irritated by her words and almost retorted, but I held back, knowing it would only make things worse. Ignoring my mother-in-law, I continued preparing dinner. What's with the way you're cutting these vegetables? Why can't you cut them nicely, she criticized. This is the correct way to cut them. Weren't you aware? I replied, trying to maintain my composure. What? There's no need to cut them like that. What are you planning to make for dinner? Don't feed my son anything weird, she demanded. As I was cutting the ingredients, my mother-in-law was scrutinizing my every move. It was incredibly uncomfortable, and her constant complaints made everything take longer and made me more frustrated. By the way, what are you here for? It's almost dinner time, I said, hoping she wasn't planning to stay. It's fine. This is my son's house, isn't it? So it's practically my house, too. I can come whenever I want. Besides, I'm curious about what you usually cook, so I'll taste it before I go, she insisted. She planned to eat the food I'd prepared, even though I didn't invite her. Actually, you don't have to do that today. I'm making fried chicken, which my husband loves. It might be a bit heavy for you. Today, I'm planning to make tomato soup and my husband's favorite fried chicken, I suggested. Upon hearing fried chicken, she frowned momentarily. I thought she might leave, but she said, I can't leave without tasting your cooking. Prepare something light to cleanse the palate. So, reluctantly, I prepared dinner for her as well. Just as the fried chicken was ready, my husband came home. Mom, what are you doing here? I didn't know you were coming, he exclaimed, clearly surprised to find her at home. It's fine. I was curious about how you're living. I'll have dinner here too, she replied casually. If Isabella is okay with it, then I guess it's fine. But didn't you come unannounced last time? Did you call ahead today? My husband asked. Why should I have to call? This is your house, so it's practically my house too. I don't need to call, she asserted, ignoring her own son's request. Mom, that's not how it works. Just because it's my house doesn't mean you can show up unannounced. Always call Isabella first to check if it's okay, my husband insisted, taking my side. But that seemed to upset her. They argued the whole time I was preparing dinner. She even accused me of turning her son against her. Finally, dinner was ready, and we all sat down to eat. My husband was delighted with the fried chicken, but my mother-in-law was not. What is this? The fried chicken is too big and greasy. I can't eat this. You shouldn't be feeding my son such unhealthy food. I regret letting him marry you, she complained about every dish I had prepared. What are you talking about? Isabella worked hard to make this. You're the one who insisted on joining us for dinner. If you're not happy, you can leave. My husband stood up for me. Suddenly, my mother-in-law started crying. How could you speak to me like that? You used to be so kind. It must be Isabella's fault. She's changed you, she accused. I'm sorry, Isabella. I never thought my mom could be so selfish. My husband apologized on behalf of his mother, clearly not expecting her to act the way she did. After that incident, my mother-in-law stopped contacting us and making surprise visits. We thought she was too embarrassed to show up after being scolded by her son. I might have been a bit harsh, but honestly, her unannounced visits were inconvenient. I've been particularly busy with work recently, as it's the busy season. Even though I come home exhausted, it's mentally tough to have my mother-in-law attack me in this state and throw me around selfishly, I reflected. When my mother-in-law stopped coming, life got easier. I was more productive at work and at home. I hoped things would stay peaceful, but little did I know, mother-in-law was plotting something terrible. It all started with a phone call. Not long after my husband got home, mother-in-law called. She invited us to a barbecue at her house during the upcoming holiday weekend. Abigail will be there too. Why don't you both come? We were surprised that mother-in-law, who had been so inconsiderate before, was now asking about our availability. My husband and I exchanged glances. Sure, we're free that day. Thanks for calling to invite us. My husband ended the call, and we both thought that maybe his stern words had finally gotten through to her. After all, I thought that instead of storing up my dissatisfaction, I should tell the person I don't like it. A few days later, we went to mother-in-law's for the first time in a while. When we arrived, my sister-in-law, and her husband were already there, setting up for the barbecue. We get along well, so I was happy to see her. She's pregnant, so I helped her with her preparations. Mother-in-law was completely different from before. She didn't give me a hard time at all. In fact, she even apologized for her previous behavior. I'm sorry for being so inconsiderate before. Next time, let's plan ahead. When I said that, my mother-in-law looked very happy. The barbecue was fun, and we all enjoyed some light conversation. Since we were staying overnight, I even had a few drinks. But this was just the calm before the storm. The real nightmare began later, around 2 a.m. I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen for some water. There I found mother-in-law rummaging around. This will be the end of that daughter-in-law. I couldn't hear her clearly, but she left the kitchen soon after, so I thought she was just thirsty like me. However, I would find out the next day that this was not the case. The next day, mother-in-law started cooking something in the kitchen. What are you making? My special shrimp po' boy. I prepared it secretly last night, my husband said. Her shrimp po' boy was delicious, so I was excited to try it. I remembered what happened the night before, and was glad I hadn't interrupted her. Mother-in-law asked me to make clam chowder, so I started cooking. If he had kept it a secret, he shouldn't have called out at that time. My mother-in-law asked me to make clam chowder instead, since she fried food. So, I decided to make clam chowder. When my husband and others smelled the food, they came into the kitchen. Ah, Mom's shrimp po' boy. It's been a while. Everyone was looking forward to it. As I was about to serve the food, mother-in-law said, I'll take care of that. You go sit down. I noticed something black on my shrimp po' boy. Just as I was about to eat it, my phone rang. It was a call from a junior colleague at work. Eat your food, Isabella. It won't taste good if it gets cold. But father-in-law isn't here yet. He'll be here soon. Just eat. I was about to eat when my phone kept ringing. Something might have happened. So I excused myself to take the call. I heard mother-in-law make a sound as I left. My father-in-law took my seat as he returned from the bathroom. Ah, Mom, shrimp po' boy looks delicious. Father-in-law sat down in the empty seat and reached for my shrimp po' boy. That's Isabella's. Mother-in-law tried to stop him, but no one else intervened because I hadn't touched it yet. It's fine. She hasn't touched it yet. My husband encouraged father-in-law to go ahead and eat. Bon appetit. Don't eat it. It was too late. Father-in-law had already taken a big bite. What is this? Father-in-law suddenly started making a fuss after eating the shrimp po' boy. Everyone stopped eating and looked at him. I returned from my phone call to find father-in-law covered in red hives, struggling to breathe. I told you not to eat it. That was Isabella's shrimp po' boy. Confused, we called an ambulance and rushed father-in-law to the hospital. In the hospital, it turned out he had an allergic reaction, but timely treatment saved his life. According to my husband, father-in-law had no food allergies, only to cats and dogs. I'm also allergic to cats. Even a slight touch can give me hives. But there were no cats at mother-in-law's house. The doctor asked us what could have caused the allergic reaction. I noticed mother-in-law looking awkward and uneasy. What's wrong, Mom? You look pale. Do you know something about Dad's condition? Well, mother-in-law had been acting strange. Then I remembered her saying, that was Isabella, shrimp boy. What did you mean by that? You know something, don't you? Cornered, mother-in-law finally confessed. I put cat hair on Isabella's shrimp boy. You said you were allergic to cats, right? I wanted to get back at you for last time, but I didn't think it would turn out like this, she admitted to mixing cat hair into my shrimp boy. I remember seeing something black in it, but thought it was shrimp whiskers. If I had eaten it, I might have ended up like father-in-law. The thought sent shivers down my spine. However, what mother-in-law did is completely unforgivable. If you make a wrong move, what were you thinking? My husband confronted mother-in-law. She never respects me. She only serves cheap snacks and doesn't listen to me. I was dumbfounded. The reason I couldn't prepare better snacks was that mother-in-law always showed up unannounced. If you had told us you were coming, I would have prepared your favorite snacks and listened to you, I said. Mother-in-law's selfishness had put father-in-law in the hospital, and I felt helpless. It's not Isabella's fault, it's yours, Mom. Mother-in-law lost her temper. I'm the mother-in-law. She should be prepared for my visits. She never treats me well, so I thought I'd teach her a lesson by putting cat hair in her food. Mother-in-law showed no signs of remorse. That's it. I can't forgive you for trying to harm someone I care about. We're cutting ties with you, my husband declared. Me too. I can't deal with you anymore, especially with a baby on the way. How does it feel to be disowned by your own children? If it were me, I don't think I could ever recover. Mother-in-law, who was always high on pride, insisted she did nothing wrong, even when criticized by her husband and sister-in-law. So we got permission from the doctor and went to visit father-in-law in his hospital room. When father-in-law heard what had happened, he apologized to me on mother-in-law's behalf. Right after he was discharged, he served mother-in-law with divorce papers. Why should I get divorced? All I did was play a little prank on my daughter-in-law. I absolutely won't agree to a divorce. Mother-in-law, who never thought she'd be divorced, was outraged. In the end, the situation escalated to involve other family members. Mother-in-law was humiliated and forced to sign the divorce papers in front of everyone. We moved to a secure apartment far from our parents' home to ensure mother-in-law couldn't visit. The moving costs were a burden, but it was worth it to be free from the stress of mother-in-law's visits. Thanks to that, I became pregnant and safely entered the stable period. We found out we were having a boy and spent happy times picking out baby items and thinking of names. That's when it happened. Mother-in-law, somehow finding out about my pregnancy, suddenly showed up in front of my workplace. I was shocked to see her as I was leaving work. I finally found you. She closed the distance between us with incredible speed. It's all your fault. If you hadn't left your sleep that day, I wouldn't be divorced now. Take care of me. She appeared out of nowhere, demanding I take care of her. Apparently, mother-in-law was not only shunned by father-in-law's relatives, but also her own, and she was struggling financially. I have nothing to do with your problems. Why should I take care of you? I spoke my mind as she's now a stranger to me, but mother-in-law grabbed me and started yelling right in front of my workplace. Stop it! I'm pregnant. I don't care. I'm struggling here. Security and colleagues tried to restrain her, but she was uncontrollable. I was worried about my unborn child when I heard sirens in the distance. Someone had called the police for me. In fact, the person who made the report also thought I was being attacked by a suspicious person and called the police. Mother-in-law was taken away by arriving officers. I told my husband about the incident when I got home. I can't believe she'd do something like that. I'm just glad you're okay, Isabella. I felt a bit sorry for mother-in-law being referred to as that person by her own son. It's true that the mother-in-law is at fault, but as a mother myself, I feel a little sorry for her child who calls her that person instead of calling her mom. Mother-in-law ended up spending a few days in jail to reflect on her actions, but even after her release, she was still struggling financially. She called all her relatives for financial help, but no one was willing. We also received a call, but there was no way we'd help her after what she had done. But mother-in-law didn't give up. She kept asking, "When will they come to get me?" But her children never came. Mother-in-law finally realized she was abandoned and spent her days crying in regret. On the other hand, I safely gave birth to a baby boy. Giving birth for the first time was difficult, but I was really happy that the baby was born healthy. A month after my discharge, my sister-in-law and father-in-law visited us with gifts. My father-in-law and I have a lot of issues with my mother-in-law, but we still have an agreement to meet regularly. Father-in-law is now living in a small apartment near us and works as a tennis coach. He was actually a strong tennis player in high school. I have always been an active person, and I often spend my days off doing physical activities, such as running and swimming. He enjoys buying toys and clothes for his grandson. Despite all the drama with mother-in-law, we're happy now. Our son is growing well, and we're looking forward to raising him together.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.